What is up, YouTube? It's Logan here from Chronic Cultivation. Today is an exciting day as I'm going to go over the newly signed laws in Minnesota for personal use and home cultivation of cannabis. May 30th, 2023, Governor Tim Walz signed a bill into law that goes into effect August 1st of 2023. So between now and then, still prohibition, still no, bad, get in trouble. Starting August 1st, everything changes. So let's dive right into it. Where I'm getting this information from is not just some news article. I have here the actual bill that was signed and presented to the governor. It's House File number 100, Chapter 63. Now, it does say that it does not represent the official 2023 session law and that it might change. As far as I know, between last week when the Senate and House agreed on this bill, this version, they put their two versions together and came up with this, and yesterday, when Tim Walz signed this into law, nothing has changed. Now, I don't know that for certain. I couldn't find anything saying that it's changed. Always encourage you to do your homework. If you're about to do something that you're afraid might be illegal, 100% look it up. Disclaimer, I am not a lawyer, but we're going to go over the sections I think are most relative to you and important to you, and we're going to try and keep it short and sweet. Here I have the section that relates to what we are interested in: personal adult use of cannabis. Excuse me. So let's start right from the top. I've highlighted some sections. I won't read every word. It's a little lengthy. In this whole bottom section, we're not going to go over. It's just penalties. A link will be in the description for you to view the bill in its entirety. And for most computers, you can do Control F or Command F and search for keywords in that bill. And that's how I found the things I'm looking for. I encourage you to go through and read things. It's really interesting, what businesses can do, what they can't do, transportation laws. But that's not the topic of this video today. Let's look at what you and I can do starting August 1st. You got to be 21 years old. Not a surprise. You may possess or transport up to 2 ounces. I do believe I read it has to be in a locked container in your vehicle, kind of like a firearm. Not just like alcohol where it just has to be in your bag, but it actually has to be locked. I don't have that specifically in this section, but look into that before you transport. Sorry for the baby music my daughter is playing in the background here. But nevertheless, I digress. You may possess up to 2 pounds at home in your private residence. This is interesting because as a grower, we'll find out later, you can have up to 4 flowering plants at a time. You can grow a lot more than 2 pounds with 4 plants in flower. For sure. So some logic oversights in these laws, but me personally, I'm happy with what we've got. This is awesome. For a bill that's the first wave of recreational use legalization in our state, amazing. 10 out of 10. Maybe 9 out of 10, because this is one of those things that could have been improved, but I'm happy with it. I'm not complaining. You may possess or transport up to 8 grams. So keep in mind, we were just talking 2 ounces is for transport of flower. 2 pounds of flower is what you may possess in your private residence. Now we're back to transporting, but also possessing for these next ones. You can possess or transport 8 grams or less of adult use concentrate. Not a lot. And actually, I noticed the verbiage here is possess or transport up to 2 ounces of flower. So I guess they just use possess or transport when they're talking about transporting. 8 grams of flower, or 8 grams of concentrate, up to 800 milligrams of an edible. Not a lot. I don't imagine there's too many people that are just carrying like 4 800 milligram edibles with them to get through the day. That's a lot of THC. A lot. A lot. Right now, the legal limit is 5 milligrams of THC per edible. And I do get some effect off of just 1 or 2 of them. And I haven't been using frequently, but all has to do with your tolerance. For 90% of you watching this video, maybe even more, 800 milligram limit is A-okay. Only thing that makes me sad is at home, if you were to process a good chunk of your harvest into edibles, you're very quickly going to make more than 800 milligrams of THC in an edible. And it's also going to be very difficult to actually know what's in your edible. There might be a variance in the distribution of THC when you're mixing your butter or whatever it is that you're making. Or if you put the butter in some brownie mix and you mix that up, it's not going to be perfectly distributed. So keep that in mind. Be very careful with concentrates and edibles. If you want to stay following the law to the T, those are things you need to be very mindful of. Now you can gift to an individual who's at least 21 2 ounces of flower, 8 grams of concentrate, or up to an 800 milligram THC edible. Very cool. It kind of goes without saying. That's cool. I mean, there's not much more to say. Christmas and holidays are going to be epic for people who partake. It's very cool too because we'll easily get over the 2 pounds a harvest, depending on your growing conditions. I mean, you can easily stay under that too if you want to. So then you can just gift more than the 2 pounds so that you're not sitting on a bunch of illegal weight, just to feel good, sleep easier at night knowing that you're following the law, which is entirely my goal here. This is really exciting. Where were we here? Use of adult cannabis flower and adult use cannabis products is allowed in these locations: a private residence, including the curtilage or yard. So your porch, your yard, good to go. Where you're not good to go, and I highlighted this section lower down, is if it's near a minor. If a minor can inhale the smoke or the fumes or the vapor, it's illegal. So you need to be really courteous to your neighbors, to anybody just in general, which you should be doing anyways, but to follow the law, if you got kids playing in the yard that is adjoining yours and it's 30 feet away, don't smoke a fat joint outside, all right? If the parents get mad, which they probably will and probably should, you're in the wrong. You were in the wrong before the law was passed, but now you're more in the wrong. Now, I know there are some families that smoke around their kids and things, so maybe there's some opinions there, and I'm in the wrong, but personally, I don't think that's right. Not for the little ones. Nevertheless, where were we here? You can use it on private property not accessible by the public. So this doesn't have to be your home. It could be your hunting shack or whatnot. As long as it's not in the public, you're good to go. And it does say here you can get permit on-site consumption. They have event licenses that'll be distributed. So that's pretty cool. You might have a concert in town where they permit smoking in the audience or whatnot. Hang on, my baby's grabbing the microphone cord. I'll be right back. All right. Toddler is distracted. Sorry about that. She'll probably be back real quick though, so we'll hurry through. So you can use it on private property, events. Here's also an important section. An individual may not. So this is what you can't do, and this is important. Cannot use it in a motor vehicle, period. Don't go hotbox your car. It's illegal. It doesn't matter if the engine's off. You may not do it in sections where it's prohibited. So if it says no smoking, surprise, you can't smoke. I don't think that one is too much of a shocker. Let's see here. Can't use it in schools. You can't use it in state correctional facilities. You can't be on the jail yard, blowing it over to your buddies. It's not going to fly. Surprise. You may not operate a motor vehicle while under the influence of cannabis flower. Now, this is an interesting one because tolerance and the effect on you is so subjective. Right now, there's not a well-established way to determine if you're impaired with THC. There have been some Supreme Court cases in Minnesota. I don't have that right in front of me here. Maybe I'll post a link in the description, or let me know if you're curious, and we'll dive more into that topic because it's interesting. But I was just reading about a Supreme Court case where bloodshot eyes, speech impairment were not enough for an officer to convict the driver of a DUI for cannabis specifically. So there's a lot of leeway. Right now, the ball is in our court. Like, we are okay. Now, you shouldn't be driving stoned. I'm not an advocate of driving while you're high. Don't smoke in the car. None of that's cool with me. Treat it just like alcohol in the vehicle. But let's say you had an edible in the morning and in the evening you have somewhere to be. You're going grocery shopping. You don't feel it at all, but technically there's probably still some THC in your blood and your eyes are probably still a little bloodshot. Situations like these make it difficult for the cop to determine if you're impaired. My best advice is just follow these laws, make sure your vehicle is legal, be courteous when you interact with the police officer. Just like during Prohibition, my guess is that 90% of the time that cop does not care. If you were not driving recklessly, if you were not endangering people, if you were being a good driver, that's what matters. But still, you may not operate a motor vehicle under the influence of any amount. So right here, it's kind of vague, but I saw another verbiage somewhere else in the bill that was very clear. You may not be under the influence at all, like period, zero. But they didn't say how that's determined. So more on that later, I guess. I highlighted this section. I already talked about it, but it's specifically saying you may not do anything where the smoke, aerosol, vapor would be inhaled by a minor. That's going to be a big restricting factor you need to take into account no matter where you are, no matter if you're camping, no matter if you're at the beach, no matter if you're in your home. You need to be conscious of the minors because that can bite you in the butt. That's pretty much it for the things you can't do, other than you can't, possess more than you're allowed to, and like the real obvious things. Home cultivation of cannabis for adult use. So this will be the first video on my channel here, Chronic Cultivation, and the goal of this channel is specifically for Minnesota growers, but it's going to be something that applies to anybody growing indoors anywhere because the indoor environment is controllable. That's why we're going to grow indoors in Minnesota, where outdoors isn't an option. But to me, you're always going to get a better product when you can control every little factor, and it's more fun to me as well. There's a lot to be said for growing outdoors and just letting nature run its course. And I hope that someday we have content related to that because I would love to do it. But primarily, it's going to be indoor cultivation, which is what this section is talking about. You may have up to 8 cannabis plants at a time. Not a lot. I wish that was higher. But you may have up to 4 flowering or being mature, which is just flowering. As soon as you put your light schedule to 12-12 for a photo period, or your auto flowers start putting out pre-flower, the pistils or balls if you got some boys in there, then you got to count it as a mature plant. I was just thinking to myself, like, balls, that's definitely not the right word. You know what I'm talking about, the pollen sacs. Like, I'm not actually sure about the terminology on that one. But that's the kind of stuff we're going to dive into and make some helpful videos so that we're educated on the proper terminology, the proper methods. And growing cannabis is an art. It's not a science. I could show you one way to do it. I could show you another way to do it, and then we could do it a different way. And all the different ways are going to have pros and cons. Everyone has an idea of what their best way is. Our goal is to get you producing cannabis flower to then do whatever you want with it, whether you extract, whether you make edibles, whether you make it tinctures. But we want you to do it in a safe way, in a fun way. It's the most rewarding hobby I've ever had in my whole life, by far. In a way that brings you closer to the product from seed to harvest. It's just a great journey, and I hope that I'll be able to help you get there successfully and not run into some of the roadblocks that I ran into having less resources available to me when it was not legal. There's still plenty of resources, but trial and error is a painful way to learn when it takes several months for you to grow. So I aim to have you fully prepared prior to even germinating that seed, or at least have the content available to you where you can make the decision to prepare yourself. And I encourage you to do so. So stay tuned for that. There's really not much in the home cultivation section here for us to cover. I wanted to keep it less than 10 minutes this video. We're coming up on 15. Sorry about that. Just the way it goes. I actually recorded a few different times here. And a section will be edited out because my daughter did unplug the microphone. But it says, it must be in an enclosed, locked space that is not open to public view. So this is important. I wanted to use like my living room, but all of my major windows could see it. And it wouldn't be a locked area, so it wouldn't work legally, and so I'm not going to do it. You need to take this into consideration. It needs to be a locked room, which should be easy enough. Just about every door has a locked. Also can't be in the public view, so just close your curtains or something. Your grow light should produce enough light for you to work in there. Not out of the ordinary. Oftentimes I have my windows blocked out in the grow room anyways for flower just to be safe, but it's important to know that you cannot use volatile solvents for extractions, so no butane extractions. Not a huge deal. I'm interested in that from kind of the perspective of just knowing how it works and seeing it and learning about how you can really do some interesting things like it's like making your own recipe. You take out the THC and you take out some terpenes and you mix them together and make just the right thing. Sounds really cool. Not going to be something we can do right now. And personally, I'm a big advocate of having a very clean product, and rosin pressing is the way to go. Now, I'm just about out of time on my recording here. I'm running out of space on my phone, but this was everything that you needed to know as a personal user, possibly a cultivator. If you're undecided, stay tuned and watch us grow our first season here, and maybe that'll convince you that it's something you want to try. That's all I've got for you today. Again, it's Logan with Chronic Cultivation. Like, subscribe if you want to learn about growing, get some Minnesota-specific content that applies everywhere, even if you're not in Minnesota. And I'll be coming back to you with more very soon. Peace out.